I'd been sleeping in my taxi for 3 months when I picked up the passenger who changed my life. I was at rock bottom, homeless, broke, living on gas station coffee and whatever tips I could scrape together. Then this well-dressed stranger got into my cab, looked at me in the rearview mirror, and went pale. "My God," he whispered, "you look exactly like my brother, but he's been missing for 25 years." Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, what's the most unexpected connection you've ever made with a stranger? And if stories about family, second chances, and finding where you belong speak to you, follow this page so you don't miss the next one. 6 months ago, I had a life that looked good on paper. A house in the suburbs, a wife who smiled in photos, 2 kids who called me dad, and a job managing a small construction company that paid the bills and then some. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. I was somebody. Then it all fell apart in the space of 2 weeks. First, the company went under. Our biggest client defaulted on payments, and we couldn't cover payroll. I had to lay off 12 good men who'd worked for me for years, then lock the doors and hand the keys to the bank. 20 years of building something, gone. My wife, Jessica, took the news about as well as you'd expect. "How could you not see this coming?" she demanded, pacing our kitchen like a caged animal. "How could you be so careless with our future?" I tried to explain about the client, about the economy, about how these things happen in construction, but Jessica had already made up her mind. Within a week, she'd filed for divorce and moved back to her mother's with our kids, Ella 8 and Ricky 6. "I can't do this anymore, Ezra," she said as she packed their clothes. "I can't live with the uncertainty. The kids need stability." "I'll find another job, I promise. I'll figure this out." "When? How? You're 42 years old with no college degree and a failed business. Who's going to hire you?" The words hit like physical blows, but the worst part was that she wasn't wrong. I'd built my entire career on one company, one skill set, one network that had just evaporated. I was starting over at an age when most people were thinking about retirement planning. The house went into foreclosure 2 months later. I moved into a studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes and broken dreams, but even that became too expensive when the unemployment benefits ran out, and my job search kept hitting dead ends. That's how I ended up driving a taxi. I'd bought an old Crown Victoria from a guy who was getting out of the business. Yellow paint, faded to the color of old mustard, 200,000 miles on the odometer, and a passenger seat held together with duct tape. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it could earn money. The taxi company took 60% of my fares, which left me with barely enough to cover gas, food, and the weekly motel room I'd been renting. When even that became too expensive, I started sleeping in the car. 3 months of that routine had worn me down to nothing. I'd shower at truck stops, brush my teeth in gas station bathrooms, and try to look presentable enough that passengers wouldn't complain. My clothes were wrinkled, my beard was getting scraggly, and I could see the judgment in people's eyes when they got into my cab. I was invisible in the way that homeless people become invisible, a problem society would rather not acknowledge, a reminder of how quickly everything can fall apart. The morning I picked up Logan, I'd been awake since 4 a.m., parked outside the airport waiting for the early flights to land. I'd made maybe $30 in fares, enough for gas and a cup of coffee, but not much else. My back ached from sleeping in the driver's seat, and I was starting to wonder how much longer I could keep this up. That's when the call came in. Pickup at the Marriott downtown, heading to the airport. The Marriott was the kind of hotel I used to stay at when I traveled for business, back when I had business to travel for. Now I pulled up to the valet stand feeling like an intruder, my beat-up taxi looking shabby next to the luxury cars and town cars that usually serve this clientele. The passenger was waiting by the curb, checking his phone. Mid-40s, expensive suit, leather briefcase. The kind of confident posture that comes from never having to worry about where your next meal is coming from. "Airport?" I asked as he slid into the back seat. "Actually, change of plans. Take me to 1500 Market Street, please." I pulled away from the curb and glanced in the rearview mirror to check traffic. That's when I saw him, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Shock, maybe? Or recognition? "Is everything okay?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately, just kept staring like he'd seen a ghost. Finally, he leaned forward. "I'm sorry, this is going to sound strange, but what's your name?" "Ezra," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "Ezra, well, just Ezra." "Just Ezra? No last name?" I glanced in the mirror again. His face had gone pale. "Look, if you're uncomfortable, I can call another cab." No, it's not that. It's just, you look exactly like someone I used to know. The resemblance is uncanny." I'd heard that before. People sometimes said I looked familiar, that I reminded them of someone. It happens when you have one of those faces. Not particularly distinctive, but somehow universal. Yeah, I get that a lot. One of those faces, I guess. "What's your last name?" "I don't know." The words came out before I could stop them. I usually avoided this conversation, but something about his intensity made me answer honestly. "You don't know your own last name?" I pulled up to a red light and turned to face him. "I was in an accident 25 years ago. Head injury, lost most of my memories before that day. The hospital called me John Doe, but I chose Ezra when I got out. Always liked the sound of it." "You were..." He was staring at me like I'd just told him I was from Mars. 25 years ago. How old were you?" 17, according to the doctors." "Why?" The light turned green, but I didn't move. Cars started honking behind us. "My brother," he said quietly. "My younger brother disappeared 25 years ago. He was 17. And you..." He shook his head. "You look exactly like him, like he would look now." I pulled through the intersection, my hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel. "That's quite a coincidence." "Is it?" He leaned forward again. "What do you remember about the accident?" "Not much. I was found on a highway about 50 miles outside the city. No ID, no wallet. No one reported me missing. The police figured I was a runaway, maybe hitchhiking. Head trauma wiped out everything before that day." 50 miles outside the city, he repeated. "That's the same highway my brother was traveling when he disappeared." I pulled over to the curb and put the car in park. My heart was pounding. "Look, Mr. Westfield. Logan Westfield." "Mr. Westfield, I think you might be mistaken. I mean, what are the odds? My brother's name was Ezra," he said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned around in my seat to face him fully. "What did you say?" "My brother. His name was Ezra Westfield. He was 17 when he disappeared. And you..." He pulled out his phone and scrolled through photos. "You look exactly like our father did at your age." He showed me the screen. It was an old family photo. Parents with 2 boys, one maybe 19, one 17. The younger boy had my eyes, my nose, my mouth. It was like looking at a picture of myself from 25 years ago. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Is it?" Logan's voice was gentle now, hopeful. "Why do you think you choose Ezra to be your name? Can't it be that maybe, just maybe, something inside you said that was your real name?" I stared at the photo until my eyes watered. The resemblance was undeniable, but my mind was reeling. "This doesn't make sense," I said. "If I had a family, wouldn't someone have reported me missing? Wouldn't someone have been looking for me?" "We were," Logan said, his voice thick with emotion. "God, Ezra, we never stopped looking. The police, private investigators, search teams, we spent years trying to find you." "Then why didn't they? I was in the hospital for months. My picture was in the papers." Logan's face fell. "You were found 50 miles away, in a different county, different police department, different newspapers. And..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Our parents died in another car accident 6 months after you disappeared. I was in college, barely keeping it together. The search got complicated." The weight of his words settled over me like a blanket. "Your parents died?" "Our parents," he corrected gently. "And yes, they were driving back from meeting with another private investigator when it happened. They never gave up hope of finding you." I felt something crack inside my chest. All these years, I'd wondered about my family, imagined parents who might be looking for me, siblings who missed me. I'd never considered that they might be gone. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize. None of this was your fault." Logan leaned forward. "Ezra, do you remember anything? Anything at all before the accident?" I closed my eyes and tried to reach back into the darkness that was my past. Sometimes I have dreams, fragments. A woman's voice singing, the smell of chocolate cake, a dog, maybe? But the doctors said those might just be my brain trying to fill in the gaps. Mom used to sing while she cooked, and we had a golden retriever named Buster. You loved that dog. A flash of something, warm fur, a wet nose, the sound of barking, flickered through my mind and was gone. Maybe? I don't know. What about this? Logan pulled out his wallet and showed me another photo. 2 boys building a snowman, both grinning at the camera. Christmas, 1998. You were 16. I studied the photo. The younger boy's smile was familiar, but in the way that your own reflection is familiar. You know it's you, but you can't quite explain how. I want to believe you, but what if you're wrong? What if this is just some incredible coincidence? Then we'll find out for sure. DNA test. It'll take a few days, but we'll know definitively. I looked at him, this well-dressed stranger who claimed to be my brother, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. It was terrifying. "Why were you in a taxi? You look like you could afford a car service." Logan smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him, and it looked so much like mine. "My car's in the shop. I was supposed to take a ride share, but the app wasn't working, so I called a cab. If I hadn't..." He shook his head. 25 years of searching, and I find you because my phone app glitched." "If you find me," I corrected. "We don't know anything for sure yet." "No," he agreed. "But Ezra, I hope we do. I really hope we do." I looked at the meter, which had been running this whole time. "Your fare's going to be expensive if we keep sitting here." "I don't care about the fare," Logan said. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." Are you okay? I mean, living situation, job, everything?" I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I'm between places right now. The taxi thing is temporary." Logan's expression softened. You're homeless." It wasn't a question, and I didn't deny it. "It's not permanent. I'm working on it." "Jesus, Ezra. How long?" 3 months. "Look, I don't need charity." "It's not charity if you're my brother, and even if you're not, no one should be sleeping in their car." I wanted to argue, to maintain what little dignity I had left, but I was tired. So tired of pretending I was okay, of acting like sleeping in a taxi was a choice rather than a necessity. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "First, we get that DNA test. Then, regardless of the results, we get you somewhere safe to stay while we figure this out." "I can't afford." "I can," Logan said simply. "Let me help you. Please." I looked at this stranger, who might be my brother, who was offering me hope and help in equal measure, and made a decision that would change everything. "Okay, let's find out who I really am." Logan insisted on paying for a hotel room that night. Nothing fancy, but clean and warm, with a bed that didn't require me to fold myself into a pretzel. I hadn't slept on an actual mattress in months, and I woke up feeling more human than I had in ages. He picked me up the next morning in a rental car, and we drove to a clinic that specialized in DNA testing. The process was simple, a cheek swab and some paperwork, but the implications felt enormous. "Results in 3 to 5 business days," the technician said, handing us a receipt. "What do we do until then?" I asked, as we walked back to the car. "We investigate. I've kept everything from the search for you. Police reports, newspaper clippings, private investigator files. Maybe something will trigger a memory." Logan's apartment was in one of those converted warehouse buildings downtown. Exposed brick, high ceilings, the kind of place that screamed success. It was a far cry from the studio I'd lost, and light years away from sleeping in my taxi. "You've done well for yourself," I said, looking around. "Besides the inheritance, I got lucky. Started a software company right out of college, sold it 5 years ago. But Ezra, if you are my brother, half of everything I have is yours. Our parents left us equal shares of their estate." "I don't want your money," I said quickly. "It's not my money. It's our money. Our parents worked their whole lives to build something for their sons. Both of their sons." He led me to a spare bedroom that had been converted into an office. On a desk in the corner sat a thick, well-worn gray metal filing cabinet. "This is my search for you." Well, it was. I stopped actively looking about 5 years ago. "You stopped?" I asked, surprised. Logan sat down heavily in his desk chair. "I had to stop. It was consuming me. 20 years of leads, dead ends, and false hopes. My relationships were failing because I was obsessed with finding a ghost. My career was suffering because I spent more time investigating sightings than working." He opened the filing cabinet, revealing organized sections with labeled dividers: police reports, private investigators, sightings, hospitals. "My therapist said I needed to accept that you were probably dead, that continuing the search was preventing me from living my own life. And I tried to," he said softly. "God, how I tried. I locked all this away and promised myself I wouldn't open it again. I started dating seriously, thought about getting married, tried to build a life that didn't revolve around searching for you. What changed?" Logan looked at me with an expression that mixed guilt and hope. "Nothing changed. That's why when I saw you today, when you said your name was Ezra, it was like the universe was telling me I was right to never really give up. Even when I stopped actively searching, part of me always knew you were out there." We were silent for a moment. "What happened? The day I disappeared. You'd had a fight with Dad. I don't even remember what it was about. Something stupid, the way teenage fights always are. You stormed out, said you were going to walk to your friend's house across town. That was the last time anyone saw you." "I was walking?" "For about 2 miles, then a neighbor saw you get into a car. They couldn't see the driver or get a license plate, but they were sure it was you. So someone picked me up." "That's what we always assumed." "The police investigated every registered sex offender in a 50-mile radius, checked with all your friends, interviewed everyone at school. Nothing." I studied a map he had taken out of the cabinet, marked with red markers. "These are all the places you searched?" "Every one. Abandoned buildings, homeless camps, hospitals, morgues.
We checked with police departments in 6 states, posted your picture online before social media was even a thing." I traced the map with my finger, imagining Logan as a young man, barely out of his teens himself, trying to hold together a search while grieving his parents. This must have consumed your life. It did. I dropped out of college for a semester, nearly flunk out completely, but I couldn't just move on. Not when you were out there somewhere. A particular newspaper caught my eye. Local teen found after highway accident. The date matched what I knew about my own accident. That's you, or we think it's you. Look at the location. I read the article. A 17-year-old male found unconscious beside Highway 94, approximately 50 miles east of the city. No identification, severe head trauma. The description matched what I'd been told about my own accident. But why didn't anyone connect this to your missing brother? Logan's face darkened. Because the police in that county didn't communicate with the police in this county. Because you were listed as John Doe and we were looking for Ezra Westfield. And your parents? Died before we could make the connection. I was 19, trying to settle their estate, not fail college, and continue the search. I didn't see this article until years later when I hired a new private investigator who was more thorough than the others. Years later? 5 years later. By then, John Doe had been discharged from the hospital and had disappeared into the system. No forwarding address, no social security number on file. You'd become a ghost again.
I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. So you've known about the possibility for 20 years? I've known about John Doe for 20 years. But there have been dozens of John Does over the years. Dozens of young men who might have been you. I've chased every lead, met with every possibility. Most of them were dead ends. What made you think this John Doe was different? Logan pulled out a thick folder. The private investigator managed to get a copy of your medical records from the hospital. The injuries were consistent with being thrown from a moving vehicle. And there was something else. He handed me a photocopy of a medical report. Most of it was technical jargon, but one line was highlighted. Patient has distinctive birthmark on left shoulder blade, approximately 2 inches, crescent-shaped. I reached over my shoulder, touching the spot I'd always assumed was born with me. You know about this? I gave it to you, Logan said quietly. When you were 3, you fell off your bike. I guess I pushed you, actually, and scraped your shoulder on the concrete. It healed in that crescent shape. Mom used to say it looked like a moon. The room felt like it was spinning. That's not possible. The doctors said it was really a birthmark. I pulled off my shirt and turned my back to him. Is this it? I heard his sharp intake of breath. Oh my God, Ezra. That's it. That's exactly it. I put my shirt back on, my hands shaking. We don't need to wait for the DNA test, do we? No, Logan said, his voice thick with emotion. We don't. You're my brother. You're really my brother. He embraced me abruptly, and despite my surprise, I found myself hugging him back. The DNA results came back 3 days later, but by then, we both knew what they would say. 99.97% probability of full sibling relationship. I was Ezra Westfield, the boy who disappeared 25 years ago, the brother Logan had never stopped searching for. I need to know what happened, I said as we sat in Logan's living room, the official results spread out on the coffee table between us. Logan had been thinking the same thing. I hired a new investigator, someone who specializes in cold cases. If there are answers to be found, she'll find them. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Riley, who'd retired from the police force, took on our case with the intensity of someone who'd seen too many families torn apart by unanswered questions. It took her 2 weeks to crack it. I found your driver, she said, calling us to her office on a rainy Thursday afternoon. His name was Carl Brennan. He died 3 years ago, but before he died, he confessed to his son. Logan and I sat in stunned silence as she laid out the story. Brennan was driving drunk that night. He saw you walking along the road and offered you a ride. You got in, probably just trying to get out of the rain. About 20 miles down the highway,
He lost control of the car. The accident. The accident. His car went off the road, rolled twice. He was thrown clear, just bruised and shaken. You, she paused, you weren't so lucky. Head trauma, unconscious, bleeding. He panicked. He left me there, Logan said flat. He left me there, Detective Riley confirmed. Drove home, reported his car stolen the next morning. By the time the police found the wreck, you'd been discovered by a passing motorist and taken to the hospital.
And he never said anything? Not for 25 years. But guilt is a powerful thing. On his deathbed, he told his son everything. The son's been carrying that secret for 3 years, and when I tracked him down, he was relieved to finally tell someone. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at the man who'd left me to die, relief at finally knowing the truth, and something like closure settling over the questions that had haunted me for decades. What about the missing person reports? Logan asked. Why didn't anyone connect the dots? Different counties, different systems, and honestly, the investigation into your disappearance focused on the wrong things. Everyone assumed you'd been abducted or had run away intentionally. No one was looking for an accident victim 50 miles away. So it was just bad luck, I said. Bad luck and a drunk driver who was too much of a coward to do the right thing, Detective Riley said. I'm sorry it took so long to get answers. After we left her office, Logan and I drove in silence for a while. Finally, he pulled over at a park where we used to play as kids, though I didn't remember it yet. How do you feel? He asked. Empty, I said honestly. I thought knowing the truth would feel like, I don't know, like completion, but it just feels sad. 25 years of wondering and it comes down to a drunk driver who was too scared to call for help? Yeah. I looked out at the playground, trying to imagine myself as a child here. Logan, what if I never remember? What if the memories never come back? Then we make new ones, he said simply. You're my brother, whether you remember being my brother or not. That doesn't change. I've been homeless for 3 months. I've been sleeping in a taxi. I don't even have a real last name on my driver's license. So we fix it, all of it. We get you an apartment, we get your legal name changed back to Westfield, we figure out what you want to do with your life. I don't want charity. It's not charity, Logan said firmly. It's family. It's what our parents would have wanted. It's what I want. I looked at this man who'd spent half his life searching for me, who never gave up hope even when everyone else had moved on. What if I'm not the brother you remember? What if I'm too different? Too damaged? Then you're still my brother, just a different version than I expected. That night, in the hotel room Logan was still paying for, I lay awake thinking about identity, about the strange turns life takes, about the difference between the family you're born with and the family you choose. I'd spent 25 years as a man without a past, and now I had to figure out how to be a man with a future. A few days after the DNA results confirmed what we both already knew, Logan and I were sitting in his living room with takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. The conversation had been flowing easier each day, but there were still gaps. 25 years of life that needed filling in. Can I ask you something? Logan set down his chopsticks. What was it like, starting over at 17 with no memory, no family, no anything? I leaned back against the couch, thinking about how to compress decades of struggle into something that made sense. Terrifying, I said finally. The hospital social worker tried to place me in foster care, but we weren't sure if I was exactly 17 or 18, and the system was already overwhelmed. They gave me a social security number, helped me get a GED, and basically wished me luck. Jesus, you were just a kid. A kid with a head injury and no past. I worked construction at first, cash jobs, nothing official. Lived in a boarding house, but I was good with my hands, good at figuring out how things worked.
Logan nodded, encouraging me to continue. I worked my way up over the years, started as a laborer, became a foreman, eventually got hired as a manager at a construction company. 20 years of building something, earning people's trust, I was good at it, managing crews, keeping projects on schedule, solving problems. Sometime later, I started my own small construction company. Nothing fancy. Home repairs, small renovations. I was hungry, reliable, and I charged less than the established guys. Word spread. That's incredible. Building a business from nothing. It helped that I didn't know it was supposed to be impossible, I said with a rueful smile. I met Jessica when I was renovating her apartment. She was a teacher, stable, kind. She didn't ask too many questions about my past, which I appreciated at the time. When did you get married? I was 32, she was 27. We had Ella 2 years later, then Ricky 2 years after that. My voice caught slightly. They are everything to me. Ella has this laugh that sounds like music, and Ricky collects rocks like they're treasure. He always has his pockets full of them. Logan's expression softened. Do you see them? Every other weekend, when I can afford it, Jessica moved back to her mother's house, about an hour away. The kids don't understand why Daddy lives in a car now, why I can't take them to McDonald's anymore. I rubbed my face with my hands. Ella asked me last month if I was sick because I looked so tired. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that sometimes life just falls apart? You don't have to live like that anymore, Logan said quietly. We can fix this. All of it. I know, it's just hard to believe it's real. For 25 years, I've been Ezra Nobody, the guy with no past, no family, no safety net. When everything collapsed, there was no one to call, nowhere to go. I've gotten used to being alone. You're not alone anymore, Logan said firmly. And your kids, Ella and Ricky, they're my niece and nephew. They're family too. The idea hit me like a physical force. I hadn't thought of that. Well, start thinking about it now, because I want to meet them. I want to be the uncle who spoils them and teaches them things their parents don't want them to know. For the first time in months, I felt something that might have been hope for my children's future. They'd like that, I said. Ricky especially, he's always asking about family, why we don't have family from my side, grandparents or aunts and uncles like his friends do. Now they do. Now you all do. 2 weeks later, I was standing in the parking lot of a family restaurant halfway between Logan's apartment and Jessica's mother's house, watching my brother pace nervously beside his rental car. You're more nervous than I was on my first date, I said, trying to lighten the mood. I've never been an uncle before, Logan said, straightening his shirt for the 3rd time. What if they don't like me? What if I say the wrong thing? They're 6 and 8, not a board of directors. Just be yourself. Jessica's car pulled into the parking lot, and I felt the familiar mix of love and regret that came with seeing my children. Ella bounced out first, her dark curls escaping from her ponytail, followed by Ricky, who was indeed clutching a handful of rocks. Daddy! Ella ran toward me, and I scooped her up, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. Hey, sweetheart, I missed you. Ricky approached more cautiously, the way he always did in new situations. Dad, who's that man? I knelt down to his level. Ricky, Ella, I want you to meet someone very special. This is your Uncle Logan. Ella's eyes went wide. We have an uncle? You do now, Logan said, crouching down to their height. I've been looking forward to meeting you both for a very long time. Dad said we don't have any family, Ricky said, studying Logan with the serious expression he wore when he was trying to figure something out. Well, sometimes family finds you when you least expect it, Logan said gently. What's that you've got there? Ricky opened his palm to reveal 3 smooth stones. I found them by the creek behind Grandma's house. This one looks like a heart. See? Logan examined the rocks with the kind of serious attention that made Ricky beam. These are incredible. You know, I used to collect rocks when I was your age. I still have some of them.
Really? Can I see them sometime?
Absolutely.
While Logan and the kids talked, I caught Jessica's eye and nodded toward the side of the building. She followed me, her expression cautious but not hostile. "He seems wonderful," she said, glancing back at Logan, who was now showing Ella something on his phone. "I know, this is all sudden, but I wanted to talk to you about the kids, about how we move forward." She nodded. "They've been asking about you constantly. Ella wanted to know why you couldn't come to her school play. Ricky asked if you were going to live in your car forever." The words stung, but I pushed through. "As I told you over the phone, my parents died years ago. But Logan insisted to share the inheritance with me. I didn't want to accept, but he said it was the fair thing to do, that my parents would have wanted this. I can provide for them now. Real support, not just the little I could scrape together before. I want to be present in their lives again." "I want that too," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Ezra, I need you to know, I didn't keep them from you because I was angry. I was protecting them from seeing you struggle so much. It scared them." "I understand. I do. But now," she smiled, watching Ricky show Logan another rock, "now they can have their father back, and they can have an uncle who clearly adores them already." "We'll never be what we were," I said gently, "but we can be good parents together. We can give them stability. That's all I ever wanted, for them to feel secure, to know they're loved by both their parents, even if those parents aren't together anymore." Before I could respond, Ricky came running over. "Dad, Uncle Logan says he has a house with a pool. Can we go swimming?" I looked at Jessica, who nodded with a genuine smile. "That sounds like fun, buddy. What do you think, Mom?" "I think," Jessica said, ruffling Ricky's hair, "that Uncle Logan is going to spoil you both rotten." "That's the plan," Logan called out, walking over with Ella on his shoulders. "I have 25 years of uncle duties to catch up on." As we headed into the restaurant, I felt grateful that Jessica and I could put our children first, that we could build something healthy from the pieces of what we'd lost. 6 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of my new apartment, not fancy, but mine, with my name on the lease and everything, making coffee for Logan, who had stopped by for our weekly breakfast. It had become a tradition, these Saturday mornings where we'd sit and talk and slowly build the relationship we'd lost. The memories hadn't come flooding back like in the movies. Instead, they trickled in like water through a crack. A flash of recognition when Logan laughed a certain way, a sudden familiarity with the smell of our mother's perfume when we visited her grave, small moments that felt like coming home to a place I'd never quite left. "I have news," Logan said, as I handed him his coffee. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. The insurance settlement came through." We'd sued Carl Brennan's estate, not for money, but for acknowledgement. The civil case had been straightforward once Detective Riley's investigation provided the evidence. Brennan's insurance company had agreed to a settlement that would cover my medical expenses from the original accident and provide compensation for the 25 years of lost life. "How much?" I asked. "Enough to start over properly. Enough to do whatever you want with your life." I sat down across from him, still getting used to the idea that I had choices again. "I've been thinking about that." "And?" "I don't think I want to go back to the construction business. I want to go back to school, get my GED, maybe take some college classes. I never got to finish high school." He smiled. "That's nice. Kind of crazy, but fair. What do you want to study?" "Social work, maybe. Or counseling. I keep thinking about all the people I met when I was homeless. People who'd fallen through the cracks the way I did. Maybe I could help." "You'd be good at that," Logan said. "You understand what it's like to lose everything. And to find it again," I added. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our coffee and reading the newspaper like brothers do. Like we probably used to do, before everything went wrong. "Logan," I said, eventually. "Yeah? Thank you.
for never giving up, for keeping looking even when it seemed hopeless. You don't have to thank me for that. You're my brother. That's what brothers do. Still, I know it cost you. The time, the money, the emotional energy. You could have moved on, started your own family, lived your own life. Logan was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? I did try to move on. A few times. I'd meet someone, start dating, think maybe I could build a life that didn't revolve around searching for you. But it never worked. Why not? Because there was always this piece missing, this sense that my family wasn't complete. I couldn't commit to building something new when I hadn't finished grieving what I'd lost. And now? I can, he said simply. Now I know you're safe, you're alive, you're going to be okay. Now I can think about the future instead of being stuck in the past. I reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad you let yourself be found. Later that afternoon, I drove my taxi, which I'd kept, partly for sentimental reasons and partly because I wasn't quite ready to give up the independence it represented, to the cemetery where our parents were buried. I'd been visiting them regularly, talking to headstones like they could hear me, telling them about their sons and the life we were building together. I got my GED study guide, I told them, sitting cross-legged on the grass between their graves. Logan thinks I'm crazy for wanting to start over at 42, but I figure it's better than starting over at 82. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I could almost hear my mother's voice, the one from my dreams, telling me she was proud.
I wish I could remember you better, I said. But Logan tells me stories, and sometimes it feels like remembering. He says Mom used to sing while she cooked, and Dad taught us both how to change a tire when I was 12. He says you never gave up looking for me, even when the police said I was probably dead. A couple walked by, holding hands, visiting their own family. I nodded to them, part of the community of people who talk to the dead because the living don't always understand. I'm going to be okay, I told my parents. We both are. Logan found me, and I found him, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. As I drove home, I thought about the strange mathematics of loss and recovery, about how 25 years of searching could be resolved by a glitchy rideshare app and a taxi driver who happened to look like someone's missing brother. I thought about Carl Brennan, who'd carried his secret to his deathbed, and about the son who'd finally found the courage to tell the truth. Mostly, I thought about Logan, who'd spent half his life looking for me. My phone buzzed with a text from him. Dinner tomorrow? I'm making Mom's spaghetti recipe. Fair warning, I'm not as good at it as she was. I texted back, I'll bring dessert. Thanks for coming back, he replied. I pulled into my parking space, looked up at the windows of my apartment, my home, and felt something I hadn't felt in 25 years. Like I belonged somewhere, like I was someone's brother, someone's family, someone worth searching for. The taxi driver who'd been sleeping in his car was gone. In his place was Ezra Westfield, a man with a past and a future and a brother who never stopped believing he was worth finding. Sometimes the best journeys are the ones that bring you back to where you started, to the family you thought you'd lost, to the name you were always meant to carry. A powerful story about never giving up hope and the unbreakable bonds of family. What's the longest you've ever searched for something or someone important to you? Share your story in the comments below.
If this story of persistence, family bonds, and second chances moved you, please hit like and subscribe for more emotional stories about finding your way home. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.